Hi, and welcome to the ViaMonstra Academy and the office hours, where you can ask questions about anything related to MDT, ConfigMgr, Intune, PowerShell, Azure, Windows, OSD in general, pretty much Microsoft infrastructure to make it short. My name is Johan, and I'll be host for the next hour. And you have the option of asking questions either for those of you who have joined into the Zoom meeting directly on our Academy, or for those of you that are attending the stream on either Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, we do have a new YouTube channel, so please subscribe to that one if you haven't do that, so you don't miss the upcoming live streams announcement on that one there. Now, let's begin with the questions. Okay, I am monitoring the feed here for Q&A. I have a separate screen here where I'm seeing the questions coming in on the different social platforms. And for those of you attending the Zoom meeting, please simply use the Q&A feature here in Zoom, and I'll be happy to answer the questions that are coming in there in that location also. Now, before jumping into the questions, I do like to remind you we have still 2 more of these in March. We will publish the April time slots soon, but we will continue to run these office hours weekly. Slightly different time zones, depending on where you're in the world. You can hopefully appreciate that. You don't have to stay up until midnight just to catch one of these. And I also like to announce that we just published a new date for our quite popular, I might say, Building a Perfect Lab mini course here on the Academy. It's a free course. The next date is April 5. So we are covering the following topics, setting up everything you need for a ConfigMgr MDT or Intune lab environment, including routers, networking, virtual machines, whole deal of scripting and automation as well as part of that process. And all of this information is available here for download as well on the Academy. For those of you who simply cannot wait until April 5, we do have the recording available from a previous one we did earlier this year. That being said, do you guys have any questions at all for me? I'll be happy to answer. Up a different window here. One. So this is the course I was showing you earlier that is available on the Academy site. I just forgot to share the screen. I think that will be helpful to actually see what I'm talking about, but that one should be up there now for you. William had a question here on LinkedIn. Application reporting Intune. What's the best way of doing this? I'm assuming you're referring to basically inventory of application, and the kind of sad answer to that one that Intune doesn't really have any good reporting on applications at all at the moment. Just very, very basic information about what you have been deploying to machines and also like native application that has been available on those machines. The best way of doing reporting for apps that I've seen so far is actually not using Intune, but rather go the endpoint for Defender route, because that inventory is much better than what you have in Intune when it comes to install applications. Downside, of course, is that endpoint for Defender or Defender for endpoint, however you word it, has a quite hefty license cost to it. It's part of the Microsoft E5 or 365 E5 licensing pack. You can also buy it separately if you have a different type of license package, but it's still it's quite pricey, and I haven't seen too many organizations actually jumping in for it. The community solutions I've seen out there, they are basically using like proactive remediation scripts to get information from machines that are otherwise not available in Intune. Haven't seen one specifically for applications, but I have seen for example, for BIOS updates and things like that, which is a similar type of approach, but where you basically leveraging scripts to get information into Intune that you then can write logging for or create workbooks for and get info shown there. So that would probably be my best answer on that one. If anyone happen to know a good community solution that extends the application inventory or application reporting that Intune has, please let me know and I'll be happy to share that information. We do every week when we run these office hours, links that are being shared, they are published on this site as well together with the recording. So you'll be able to download them there or get them there as well. All right. Any other questions? Great questions. We have a whopping 51 minutes to spare. I'm waiting for more questions to come in. And for those of you who have been paying attention, you have noticed that we now have published all the Qt courses up on the Academy, so they are available. So if you're interested in learning more about these technologies, I'm obviously heavily biased, but these are pretty dang good, these courses. 2 hours every week, 6 weeks each course, and if you can't make it any of the weeks, the recordings are available. These are all live trainings, live webinars that we run here in the Academy, pretty much like the setup here in office hours. There is another question coming in on LinkedIn from Devendra. My workstation has multiple SSD drives. The MDT sequence picks the wrong one, basically. How can I make sure to install Windows on the right drive? So we actually, so MDT doesn't have that distinction by default. So if you want MDT to change that behavior, you have to do a little bit of your own scripting as well. I think I actually have an example. Let's see if I can find that one. Give me just a moment. I have too many windows open for sure. Too many folders with script also. Just need to get rid of some customer information in the script. Here we go. Okay, I'll be able to show you this one. So for those of you that have been following me and Michael Nystrom the last 2 or 3 years, you know that we have developed an extension to MDT called Friends of MDT and its PowerShell deployment kit. And remind me later for two-factor, thank you. So this is simply a PowerShell version of MDT. We extend MDT with PowerShell. And we have 2 customers currently running this in production, even though it's a community solution per se. And this has helped us sort of basically jumpstart the development on this this year quite a bit. And one of those 2 customers helped us develop a PowerShell script. I'll copy it over here. And this will go live in the next version that we release of PSD. It's currently not available, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea about what it's all about, because in this particular script, they actually added in a priority that you can set as a variable in MDT. So basically, if NVMe priority is true, then that particular disk gets priority. So basically setting that variable and forcing MDT to pick that one in front of the SATA SSD drive. And behind the code, we're simply asking the bus type here. The disk object has a bus type. Let's see if I can find that one, bus type. Yeah, so basically we're looking for hard drives where the bus type is NVMe and the size is larger than 100 gig. And that way we don't accidentally grab like a flash drive or something like that that's being used for BIOS purposes like HP SURE recovery and other like recovery type partitions or disks in the system. But this is something you can obviously develop for MDT as well. PowerShell or VB script, either is fine, but just that MDT doesn't have anything like this by default. So short and answer, if you want to have something, you have to write something like this for MDT to get that functionality. So this particular script will not work with standalone MDT. It only works with MDT that you have extended with PSD. But if you want to copy this, please drop me a message on LinkedIn or something, and I'll be happy to send it to you. You can modify that and make a version of it that works for MDT. Or you can hire an idiot that does it for you. That's also a possibility. Consulting is what I do most times, most hours of the day, but yeah, either way works. Yeah, that was that. Let's see. Alan's is asking, have I used the HP Client Management Script Library with ConfigMgr? I have looked at it briefly. What I've been using the script library primarily has been outside of ConfigMgr. And the only blog post I have written on the topic is this one here. When I was configuring HP PCs to boot the boot image directly from BIOS. Because shinier HP machines, they have that platform, the SURE recovery platform, and that one is scriptable through the library or the script management library. It basically allows you to use that extra flash drives that comes on those systems. It's just a tiny card, 32 gigs in size, but it allows you to stage your boot image, your OS image, your packages on that flash drive. So you can actually, instead of pressing F12, you press F11, and that gives you boot option. They call it factory recovery, but you can add your own boot images and images to that recovery solution. So when you boot from it, it actually starts your boot image, and in this case, it starts up a PowerShell deployment boot media. So I'll be happy to share these links that I've been showing in the chat here. So give me just a moment. I need to find the chat also. That will probably be helpful. So that was the HP one. And here is the PSD one. So this was the extension to MDT. Before I forget, for those of you interested in delivery optimization, me and Phil are actually presenting the Nordic Virtual Summit tomorrow. The session is at 8 a.m. Central Time. And it's, let's see, where did I go? Here I am. So this is the session, a deep dive into delivery optimization and Microsoft Intune. And we're basically looking behind the scenes for this. The Nordic Virtual Summit is a community event. It's free to attend. So if you haven't signed up already, I happily recommend to doing so. It's the third edition now they're running. So Nordic Virtual Summit, put that link in the chat as well. These sessions are not being recorded. So if you want to attend these ones, you actually have to see them live. They started, I believe, yesterday, and there are a lot of great speakers on this conference. So good stuff there. Mike, who joined the Zoom call here, is asking, have a question regarding GPOs and updates. What's the easiest way to move to Windows Update for Business? We can decommission our WSS server. Do we need to update any of those group policies? Our clients are indeed co-management in ConfigMgr, if that helps. So that was actually a Twitter thread going on either this weekend or earlier this week regarding some interesting findings in that particular combination when you are in a co-managed state and you're planning on switching that workload over, for example, to Intune or something like that. See if I can find that thread. I know it was Brian Dam that initiated it. Give me just a second. Searching on the second screen here. Here I found it. So this was basically the thread that was going on this week. And it targets that particular question. And what a lot of people reporting was that even though the WFP settings is supposed to take over, it doesn't always do that. They had to run additional cleanup script to clear out all WSUS settings because they simply remain in the registry. So this thread, I'll say, is a pretty good answer to that question. It doesn't seem to be 100% either. Remember, Andrew Johnson, one of the instructors here on the Academy, he also posted some of his findings somewhere. See if I can find that one. I think it was an answer to this in any of these. Here we go. So, and the reason was that it was basically due to third-party updates being handled. That's why it sometimes remain those values in the system. And I remember ARIA confirmed at some point that this is still the case. So I'll put this link in the chat for you guys. Thread on moving WSAS or SCCM with WSAS actually also to Windows Update for Business /Intune. So it was an interesting read, absolutely. What else? There was a question coming in on YouTube here. Is there a way to go back to out-of-box experience if an end user has set up their device with a local account? I mean, you can always just prep a device to bring it back to that clean and pristine state if it's an unmanaged device. Otherwise, you have the options from within Intune, for example, to either wipe or do an Autopilot refresh if that's the case of a device, or you have a system that is not configured the way you want to. So both those options are perfectly viable, and it will bring back the machine to that very state. Another option is, of course, simply just to redeploy it if the user, if it doesn't have any data on it that you need to worry about. So those are different options available. All right, let's see. Follow-up question without resetting the device. No, not that I know of. You need to bring it back somehow to that state where it can go back to that process where it's supposed to be after setup has initialized, or basically just past the specialized pass. Question on LinkedIn. Mohammed is asking about models. Let me see. It's a driver question. Large number of machines, distributing drivers can be a challenge. Yes, absolutely, it can. What I recommend these days is to continue to use the total control method for drivers, meaning one package per model, but totally ditch the import in ConfigMgr and totally ditch having packages with lots and lots of small files, because they are terrible to distribute. They are slow to download. If you do HTTPS downloads, even worse. If you try to do peer-to-peer, you will find they are very, very ineffective. So the way I recommend doing it and have for a good while now is to use tools or your own scripts like the driver automation tool. There is a new version out, 7.04, was just released last week. But this tool simply allows you to pick the models that you have from the different vendors, and you hit start download. And the option that I recommend setting is to compress that package into a WIM file. That's an option in the tool. It's nothing that you cannot do yourself through scripting. I have written a ton of PowerShell script that does the same thing, but this tool does a beautiful job in allowing you to select what you have, download, and then create packages of them. If you already have them all downloaded, sure, by all means, just run a script to create WIM files of them, but this is a good tool because the packages that are being created, they look pretty much like this. So in your packages folder, you will have the different packages from the different vendors. And let's see which one of these that I was actually using the WIM option for. Gonna check the content of this package. Yeah, so this was a zip option. I believe I did a WIM one with the HP, possibly. That was a zip one too. This was a WIM one. So basically what the tool does, if you select the WIM option, it creates a Vim file of each model. And that is very, very, very effective to distribute compared to a 2 gig packet with 1,000 files in it. This is a highly compressed, better option, a single file download, make distributions just work. And it's very, very peer-to-peer friendly for those of you that are doing peer-to-peer. So highly recommended. We share the link to this tool, I think, almost every single office hours, but it's worth sharing again. So here's the download to the tool. Maurice and Nikolai is doing an amazing job with this environment or this framework for driver management. And this script and this solution can do bare metal deployment. It can update drivers. It can inject drivers or OS upgrades. It's just a really, really good solution. And I just noticed that Jan sneaked in at some point here in the Zoom meeting. For those of you that doesn't know Jan Kjetil, he's one of the organizers behind the Nordic Virtual Summit. So that is a pretty amazing event they put together. We're actually in a speaker Q&A with them yesterday or the day before yesterday, and it just amazes me how they're able to pull something like this off. I used to complain about organizing event with like 5 or 6 different sessions. I thought that was a big undertaking or a big work, but if you look at the number of speakers here, the number of sessions, that's a lot of administration they're putting in at the back end to make this happen. So kudos, thank you guys for getting this organized. It's good stuff. All right, let's see. There is a question on LinkedIn regarding cleaning up stale devices in Intune and Azure AD. Well, Intune, you can have an automatic rule to get rid of devices that haven't been, reaching out in the last 60 days or something like that. Problem with Azure AD is that it doesn't have that. Who was that guy? I saw this the other, might have been a fellow from Germany, Lou something. It was a runbook automation or that he made available. See if this one. Yeah, here we go. Mr. Joss Lieben, he figured out a way to create a runbook. You can download this runbook, and it allows you to clean up stale devices. In this case, 90 days, I believe, was the setting he had. So that one is available for download if you want to play around with it. The Microsoft documentation on this particular piece is basically, yeah, you should do it, but we don't provide any options for it. So, okay, thank you. Something to be wary about, I think, is that if you delete Azure AD devices, there is no going back. There is no restore option. Azure AD does not have a recycle bin yet. I was actually having a conversation with the Intune support team about that just a little while ago. So there is a feedback item that you should vote for, obviously. It's coming. Here we go. So this is an excellent request to enable recycle bin. So vote that one up, submit your feedback to it, comment, and hopefully one day it can be added into Azure. That would be nice. But right now there is no restore. If you mess up and if you delete the long devices, the only option is basically to re-register that device again. So it's not the end of the world, but it's a process that you have to do on the machine to do this. So a little bit painful. All right, let's see what else. Can I copy it here? So there are some folks on LinkedIn asking if I can reply with the links here. Unfortunately, the LinkedIn API for live streaming doesn't allow me to do that. And I don't have a chance to have all the streams running at the same time in different windows. So the links will be uploaded here. So if you don't mind, go to the Academy, find office hours wherever I put it. Should be in here somewhere. Here we go. Just click this link and you'll have access to them. Easy enough. Follow-up question, what about the devices are Autopilot devices? That's something you can script as well, fairly easy. I have done a ton of Autopilot device cleanup. There are some good community resources as well. I have primarily used this when doing imaging to make sure the device is deleted or if I need to do a cleanup afterwards. But Oliver has a good cleanup script. Not Oliver Guarded, but Oliver Kieselbach. Autopilot cleanup. That script is really good. And of course, it can be modified to look at dates. The default behavior in this script, it looks at an Excel file that you or CSV file that you feed it with. But of course, that CSV file can be generated as well. So this is a good one. And then Alex Semibratov used to be Microsoft. I think he moved on. Many of you know him from back in the MDT days, probably. I think you call it Autopilot Nuke or something. It's up on the gallery. There we go, Autopilot Nuke. Close enough. And this is also a script. I'm putting that in the chat. Something I think worth noting here is that if you want to script deletion of stuff in Azure AD or Autopilot, Autopilot devices are easy because you can just call the right MS Graph API in for that, and if you have read-write for that particular object or object type, you can delete it. Azure AD, you actually need to have different type of permissions. So when I was adding up my various service objects or app registrations to do Autopilot cleanup, I ended up having to assign a role to do Azure AD cleanup. So the permissions here were more than well enough to work with managed objects Intune or Autopilot devices. But in order to actually create Azure AD objects, I needed to add this native role to it. And that took a while to find, but as soon as I had that one, then I can delete Azure AD devices using my scripts as well. Probably good features why the normal permissions are not enough, but this was the only workaround I found. Question coming in on YouTube. How would you automate an Azure Log Analytics report to send it out by email? I have not done that. I don't know. If Jan is still on the call, he might very well know, because his team was a bunch of them that did the this one here. The dashboards. I know there's a larger version you can contract them to get as well, but this one is a free one that you can download. So maybe to reach out to either Maurice, Sandy, or Jan. They might have an idea about that one, and they are usually quite friendly to answer questions that you post on Twitter or something like that. So I haven't done any reporting through email of it, and I'm not sure this one had it. Doesn't look like it. No. All right, let's see. Olivia is asking, remote imaging from internet and taking out the maximum data for a CMG. The challenge right now that if you want to do your own deployment over internet, a lot of the solutions has an egress cost to them. So if you put your deployment server up in Amazon or Azure, every time you download a file, it's going to cost you something. I have seen some clever tricks to make it cheaper. For example, David Segura, the gentleman behind OS Deploy and Cloud OSD or OSD Cloud. This is a cloud imaging solution that is pulling the WIM file as an ESD file from Microsoft CDN servers rather than from your deployment server. And he's pulling the driver packages from the vendors, Lenovo, Dell, HP, etc. And when you do it that way, it's a little bit slower in general, but it doesn't cost you anything because those are free to download from. The minute you're starting to put content on a CMG or on a PSD server or MDT with PSD extended to it, you have to start to pay for content. What we have done to reduce the cost is just enabling branch cache. The Cloud Management Gateway supports that. MDT with the PSD extension supports that. What that basically means for you is that if you have your, this is internet, by the way, if you're asking. So if you have a deployment server app in Azure and Amazon here, so Azure, Amazon, and you have an office down here with a bunch of machines. So supposed to be a computer, if you wonder. Now we have 3 computers. If you enable or embrace a little bit of peer-to-peer, you only pay for 1 download. Then that first client is sharing the content to others. And to download a 5 gig image, add in a driver package to it, maybe a few applications, we are usually talking about a 50-cent cost. So about $0.50 to deploy 1 machine. Without peer-to-peer, to deploy an office with 50 computers, it's obviously $25. But if you're using peer-to-peer, you only pay 50 cents, and then the first machine is sharing that content to others. It's like a cache server as a client. So that's a good way to keeping down CMD costs in general, especially if you're deploying to an office. Obviously, if you're deploying to machines that are at home, like just out there in the world, there is no point of enabling peer-to-peering at all. They can't reach each other anyway. So then in this case, you'll have to pay 50 cents for every imaging that you do there. Or you have to send out USB sticks to them, but that's actually probably more expensive than paying that 50 cents for the download. Yeah, that's my take on it at least. And as a bonus, it will be faster to deploy as well. There are a ton of companies doing cloud imaging internally just to be able to leverage peer-to-peer even with deployment solutions like MDT. Or if I have ConfigMgr doing imaging, they're leveraging peer-to-peer that way, so they don't have to have distribution points everywhere just to get the content out quickly. The folks at 2Point, where I do most of my work these days, they have a free OOBE toolkit. If you need support for it or anything like that, then it's paid, but the toolkit itself, it's a free toolkit. This is intended for ConfigMgr and MDT currently, and it enables peer-to-peer in WinPE basically. So it adds bits and branch cache into WinPE, which the ConfigMgr boot image doesn't have by default, but the tool adds it. So you can do peer-to-peer with branch cache that way also. So if you haven't seen this one, community tool like anything else, good stuff. The commercial version does have some perks, but the free one does peer-to-peer, and it does it well. For those of you doing, there was a follow-up question regarding Autopilot, basically on the same context as the CMD downloads. How can we speed things up? Obviously, you don't have to worry about cost because these days you don't pay for anything coming out of Intune. It's part of the subscription. I believe that was the early days of Intune. There was some cost connected to downloads, but not any more. It hasn't been for quite a while. But you can speed it up. So what you can do, and we will talk about this in our session tomorrow as well on the summit, but you can set up cache servers for Autopilot and other Intune type deployments, because packages in Intune does support delivery optimization as long as you pick the right package type, and that right package type is Win32 apps. And so that's where you want to be anyway. But that way you can speed up your deployment quite a bit by having local cache servers caching content. The downside is, I wouldn't say downside, you actually have to set up a site server, a config managed site server just to get the cache. Because as of right now, that cache server is bundled into ConfigMgr. But if you guys have Intune, you typically have a license for ConfigMgr. So you just need to set up a VM that is a cache server only. has nothing to do with ConfigMgr otherwise, but it's just there to be a cache server. And you can script all that. I have hydration kits you can download that spins up a site server. Just enable it for a cache server, and off you go. Microsoft is working on the standalone version of this, but so far it has not come into any public preview or anything like that. So it will be a while until that one is available. So for now, you're stuck with the ConfigMgr version, but you can set it up as a cache server only and don't use the ConfigMgr part at all. Just have to be a ConfigMgr server so you can add the role. Let's see. There was a question regarding what's the best way to add certificates into a boot image. Depends on what type of certificate it is. 802.1x scenarios are always very, very complex because you need to have internet or network access to actually get to the boot image. But assuming you can actually download a boot image, I just usually use PowerShell scripts to inject the certs that I need. So for example, I have a sequence here somewhere. That I was using for imaging, and here I have a script. Well, first I connect to a deployment share, and then I'm copying down, in this case, a root C that I needed to have in my boot image. So I just copy it down there, and then I have a PowerShell script that just injects that certificate into the local trusted root store in WinPE. So WinPE by default has options to inject certificates. You don't have to use certutil anymore. It's native functionality. You can still use it if you like it. You can download certutil and copy that to your boot image also. But it's fairly easy to import a certificate. If you drop me a message on LinkedIn, I'll be happy to share this little snippet I have. It's no rocket science per se, but it's nice to have something to start from rather than reinventing everything from scratch sometimes. All right. See if there are any other questions coming in. Don't see any more questions at the moment. Let's stick around a little bit while we're waiting for if there are any lingering questions coming in. Friendly reminder, the Nordic Virtual Summit tomorrow. Please join our session on the organization. It'll be shiny. For those of you that want to bring up a lab environment, April 5, that one is coming up. Price is just right. It's free and it's good content. All right. I don't see any other questions coming in. So thank you everyone for joining today, and thank you so much for the many good questions, and hope to see you guys next week. Thank you for now.